Create a Player vs. EA Episode 2. This time we're tackling Robbie Lawler. What you're seeing on screen right now is my attempt at Prime Robbie Lawler or current day Robbie Lawler, and if you want to stick around to the end of the video or skip to the end, I'll show you how we can quickly morph him into young Robbie Lawler. Now this one started out with me trying to make a young Nick Diaz CAF, and for reasons I won't get too deep into, I don't think that one's going to be possible. And because I had a young Nick Diaz on my mind, then I pivoted to a young Robbie Lawler. And since reference photos these days are much higher quality than when Robbie Lawler was in his 20s, I used current day Robbie Lawler face photos to make the face sculpt. And before I had time to add the hair and old gear, it was kind of already looking like current day Robbie Lawler, so I thought I might as well just turn it into an episode of Create a Player vs. EA, and then just tack on the young Robbie Lawler CAF as a bonus. I'll show all parts of the CAF formula you'll need to make him yourself at some point in the video. And I'm starting with the older version just because we're going to do a little compare and contrast with EA's model of Lawler before we look at the younger version that I made, which I actually think is a little bit better for reasons that we'll get into shortly. So you can see I went with facial hair number 8 there, but I also added quite a lot of tattoos to supplement and fill out the beard, which I don't like to do, but for the purposes of this video series we're trying to make these guys as accurate as possible, so it's kind of necessary, but you can absolutely get away with skipping the facial hair tattoos. Moving on to the head sculpt, we're going with head template number 37, but before I show those sliders, I'll share my thoughts on the things that I like and don't like about this CAF. The first thing I'll say is more often than not I end up being happy with the front view of my CAFs and the side view ends up looking a bit like crap, but this one was completely the opposite. The first thing that I want to point out is something that I mentioned in episode 1 is the crown of the head. To increase the accuracy on this one we would have to be able to edit the crown of the head, which we can't. As you can see, ours is just round, whereas Robbie's is more of an egg shape at the top, which is one of the reasons why adding hair at the end is going to give us a better result. I'd also like to be able to make the eyes slightly larger, but we can't do that without proportionally increasing the size of everything else on the face. It would also be nice if we could add texture to the skin, like wrinkles, or in this case freckles. As you can see, Robbie has freckles centered around the middle part of his face. But there's no real great way to add those with tattoos without making it look too much worse. The last negative thing I would point out, I guess, would be the beard. I did what I could with tattoos, but it's just not the same as real hair. Aside from that, it's decent. Most parts of the face are in proportion. But this front view, in my opinion, is the worst view of this CAF, and it gets better as we turn to the side. And the real test to know if you made a good likeness or not is if you can show someone pictures of your created fighter and they can guess who it is without you telling them the name. And I'd bet on this one that if I showed a bunch of people the screenshot of my CAF on the right, that probably a lot of them wouldn't know that it was supposed to be Robbie Lawler. But as I said, I think it starts getting better as we start turning him to the side, which in the case of this game, UFC 4, since for the most part you're looking at your fighter from a side view, it might actually be an advantage in terms of aesthetics anyways. So something a little bit unique about Robbie's head that you may or may not notice is he has a very pronounced eyebrow. Not the hair, but the actual brow bone, meaning that it sticks out quite a ways to the front and to the side of his head, which you may or may not consciously notice, but to me is one of the reasons that this starts looking a little bit more like Lawler as we turn him to the side. And here's a quick screenshot of EA's model so you can see they got that part of the head correct. And then here is our CAF again from the full-on side view, which is the best look for him in my opinion. As you can see, the head slopes down to the brow, which is very prominently sticking out forward. His eyes are slightly sunken back as well, which along with his brow bone help contribute to that demon look that he always has on his face. The nose isn't perfect, but it was as close as I was going to get because the side views with the noses in this game are just horrible. And the rest of it, all the proportions and everything are decent. Not perfect, but again, my opinion, this is the best view, but you guys will have to let me know if you think this looks at all like Lawler or not. We'll hop back in and go through the rest of the head sliders here. Keep in mind I sculpted this face using present day photos, but I was attempting to make young Robbie Lawler, so the sculpt is somewhere in between the two. You might have to make small adjustments just depending on what weight you end up putting him in, as when he was younger most of his fights were at middleweight. He had a little bit more fat, a little bit more fluid retention in the cheeks. So to add a little bit more of that, you could just go to the cheek and jaw sliders and slightly increase the bulk slider. I'll put some pics on screen of when he was younger and at middleweight. As you can see, just a generally puffier looking face, and if you think the one that I made even looks a little bit too fat, you would just go to those bulk sliders for both cheek and jaw and decrease them slightly, or at least that's what I would suggest playing around with. Okay, on to the eyes. We went with brown. Now for the body, there are no good bodies that represent Lawler in this game whatsoever. I ended up going with number 4, but I'll show you some of the other possibilities. But first, I'll show you EA's model. I actually think they did him dirty in a couple ways, both the muscle tone and the skin color. So here's Robbie on the left, and then EA's model of him on the right. Looking pretty flimsy. I mean, Lawler is jacked. He's got big arms and very prominent pecs. And EA's model is looking nothing like that at all. EA's model is on the left here, the one with the blue trunks. My model's on the right. Not saying that mine is any better, but give me some better tools and I'll make it way better than EA made theirs. Right here he's basically got the body type of Sean O'Malley. I also think his skin tone in real life is slightly darker than what they gave him, but I also could be imagining things. Maybe he's just out in the sun more often certain times of the year. Anyways, let's have a look at some of the other options for body type. Number 5 doesn't really represent him at all. Number 6, definitely not. Number 7 could work, but the torso is a little bit long. It's a little bit of a weird body. The arms aren't big enough, but it's passable maybe. You guys will have to decide what you like. I actually like this one the best, except it's too bulky. If we could just wash out the abs, the arms are big. The pecs are good. If we could just bring down the overall size a little bit, this one would be the best. But that's the one I like to use for superheroes, and that's the one I used for Yoel Romero, so for this case it's just a little bit too big. And then our only other option would be number 12. It's a little bit too stocky and the arms are too short, but I mean, with these preset body types you can't do anything about it. So I would say 12 or 4. But yeah, you guys will have to decide for yourself if you want to copy this one out. Any of the higher ones on the list are all whack or fat, so they're not going to work. So yeah. Skin tone again, I went with number 5. I think number 4 is more so kind of the one that EA went with, and like I said, I think it's a little bit too light. But you can make that decision for yourself also. Moving on to the tattoos. Now for the tattoos, I basically put what he has current day on him. Now they've changed over the years a little bit, but for the most part they're the same. I think his left arm was slightly different when he was younger, but his belly tattoo and his back tattoo I believe are the same. He's got the word gladiator written on his torso, arcing over his belly here. I brought down the opacity on these letters 1 click on the D-pad, if you were wondering. And if you want to know how to make nice looking letters on the body, I did a tattoo tutorial video a while ago. Maybe I'll just link it on the screen if you're interested. Basically, I just use tattoos from the shapes section as a guide to write letters across the body and keep them all in the same plane. And then once I have the letters on the body, I'll go back in and remove the shape, and then you have a nice even lettering. Text number 3 is what I went with for the lower back. I think I rotated it both horizontally and vertically. So square, triangle, if you're on PlayStation that is. And then for the beard, you guys know I like to use Irizumi number 3. So we've got brown hair for his facial hair. So I like to just go in with these tattoos, and for the mustache for him, I basically sized the tattoo so that it was doubling the width of the mustache that was already on his face. And then I just mess around with the opacity of these tattoos until I get the darkness that I want. And all I basically do when I'm doing this is just look at a reference photo that I'm going for and then try to replicate the beard line as well as the thickness. Now of course you're not actually going to be able to make it look perfectly like hair, but it's the best we can do. And like I said before, you don't have to add these. It looks decent without any tattoos, but Lawler's beard line is slightly higher and slightly thicker than the, I think it was beard number 8 that we went with. You could also try experimenting with some of the other beards. I know he had longer beard at certain points in his career, but most of the other beard styles are just trash in this game, I think. You could also go clean shaven too, I guess, although without any hair on the face. This one looks a little bit not as much like Lawler, I think. I also did a little bit of editing to the eyebrows. I know it's hard to see, but the best tattoos for doing this are both Critter Font 9 and Mythos Font 9. And again, I'm just looking at reference photos when I'm doing this and adding either thickness or darkness to certain parts of the eyebrows. And I know it's a little bit hard to see, so it's sometimes not best to copy these videos, but just see what the creator did and then go and look at a reference photo for yourself and try and copy what you see in the photo. Same thing as the beard tattoos. Definitely not necessary, but every little detail helps when we're trying to make these models as accurate as possible. I also added slight darkening inside each of the eyes, which is Shapes 181. I just placed on the center of the eyeball and then brought down the opacity to nothing and then just increased it by like 2 or 3 clicks just to add some more shading in his eyes. We already naturally have quite a bit of that just by increasing the protrusion of the eyebrows and decreasing the depth of the eyeballs, but this just adds a little bit more. So on his left arm here, he has what looks like a Roman gladiator with the Colosseum, I think, in the background. So I just used Portraits 8 and kind of stretched it out in a rectangle for the length of the building. And then there's another building standing much taller, which I used Irizumi 1 for here. Portraits number 9 I used to make the arms on the gladiator. Now keep in mind that the order of the tattoos matters, so I didn't place these all how they're ordered now, but I'll build something and then I'll go back and move stuff around because whichever tattoos are on top in the order are going to show up on top on the body. So some stuff will be hidden if you place it in the incorrect order, and if you're wondering why you don't see a certain tattoo, I would just recommend playing with the order of the tattoos. So you just highlight the tattoo, hit square, and then you can move it up or down on the list. Again, these are the tattoos that I use, but you don't have to use the same ones. The easiest thing to do is just go and look at a high quality photo of the fighter's tattoos that you're trying to make, and then just try to duplicate it. The very last one on here, which may be tough to see, is Irizumi number 2. The gladiator on his arm is wearing a UFC belt, so that's why I threw that on there. It kind of looks the same. Now these symbols on his right arm, I think have been here since the beginning. I think I saw these in the earliest photos that I could find of him, so you're probably safe to throw these on for whichever model of Lawler that you're going for. I always get a little bit intense trying to make all these look exactly the same as they do on the fighter, but you could probably get away with just duplicating that first tattoo that I put on the lower part and then flipping it horizontally or vertically and placing it again on his shoulder instead of getting complicated with all the different shapes that I used. And all these are brought down in opacity a little bit just so they're not full black. And I think that is pretty much it for his tattoos. The other thing I forgot to mention, I did show it earlier, but Lawler's stance is in the game, so make sure to pick that and make sure you pick Southpaw. As far as emotes go, I don't remember what he has for pre-fight or if he has any, but I definitely know that there's a Lawler one for post-fight. So if you head over to post-fight, hit square and filter over to rare, and then if you don't have it unlocked already, head down in alphabetical order to Robbie Lawler and choose that one where he's huffing and pacing around like a maniac. I wasn't gonna buy it just for this video, but yeah, it's there if you want it. Last thing we'll have a look at is the clothing. So I went with the short black Valetudo shorts. If you're trying to make Prime Lawler, that's probably what I'd recommend. But yeah, there's Prime / current day Robbie Lawler. Did I make a better CAF than EA did? Again, no, I don't think so. But I also think they didn't make the best model, especially when it comes to the body shape. I think mine was not great from the front facing view, but it gets better as we turn it to the side. That's my opinion. You guys will have to let me know if you agree or not. But yeah, let us hop into the part where we easily transition this CAF into a young Robbie Lawler. For the most part, I would recommend going some sort of dark, probably black, either board shorts or Valetudo shorts. There's a whole bunch of different options. It's just going to depend what you have unlocked. I'll just head down here in the board shorts to some that I don't have unlocked. Just to show you a couple options you could go with. There's a couple with sponsors on that you might want to go with. These Strike Force ones would work fine. He fought for Strike Force. Maybe these red ones possibly with the sponsors on them. He also, if I'm not mistaken, had a fight with Pride. You could go with some Pride shorts. Again, it's all just going to depend on what you have access to and what specific version you're going for. So here's some Strike Force Valetudo shorts. I want to say in his fight with Diaz 1, he had long black trunks like these without the big belt, which unfortunately there aren't any real options for those other than the ones with the UFC logo on them. All the board shorts aren't long enough. But I'm just going to stick with these black board shorts. And then as far as gloves go, I would move off of the UFC gloves. You could go with these red Strike Force ones I went with. Again, you could go with Pride gloves. Or you could just go with any basic color glove. Probably just the basic black ones would be the best option. But now let's hop over to the hair. So I'll show you a bunch of different hair options we can go with. And then you guys decide what you like best. Here's the first one if you want to go with kind of the really short hair, although even in his early 20s he had more of a receding hairline than that one, so pros and cons. But hair 26 would be the first one. That would be a decent option. It's got a little bit of length. It's got the receding hairline. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but the hair colors in this game are not the best, so Lawler doesn't have black hair, but the next darkest hair color is too light. But if you like that look better, go with that. I just ended up going with black, even though it's too dark, but it is what it is. See, now that we have some hair on him, the front view isn't quite as bad because we can hide the crown of his head. But still, I'm getting more Lawler vibes as we turn his head to the side. This hair is not, it's okay, but it's a little bit too much of an old man style, I think. Hair 32, another possibility. Hair 33. I think hair 33 was probably the one that I was debating going with before I chose the one that I eventually did. A bunch of the old photos of Robbie that I found looked pretty similar to this, but probably had a little bit more length on the side. I don't know. Looks alright. Kind of like Robbie Lawler, young Robbie Lawler. Hair 40, another option. A little bit too curly though. That's kind of like the Josh Koscheck hair. Yeah, here, 44. This is the one I think that I like best. I think this is the one, when I was making it, was giving me the best Robbie Lawler vibes. I don't know. Front still not perfect, but I think it looks a lot like Robbie Lawler from the side. I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm delusional. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Robbie Lawler CAFs. It's unfortunate that I couldn't make the young Nick Diaz one work out. I've had several people ask for that one, and that's one that I really wanted to make. But this was the next best thing. Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler rematch, 17 years after the first one. There's just absolutely no way this fight isn't a banger, as long as Nick makes it there. He just asked the fight to be switched to middleweight from welterweight, and he didn't end up doing his media day scrum, so we'll see. Anyways, thanks for watching. More to come.